can scream and shout with all your might. Dig in your heels and hold on tight. Either you are wrong or I am right.
Don't forget the third possibility. You are wrong and I am right. Even on a day like this, I'm having the crappiest day ever. You know, I'm serious. What? Randy's saying it's not that bad. I should get over it. Alright, it's not that bad, but it's bad enough. It's been annoying. I've gotten nothing done today, other than eating a banana split at Walrus ice cream, as if I really needed that much food. That's the only thing I've accomplished today. Welcome to another edition of Stating the Obvious, brought to you by the Cynical Libertarian Society. I am, of course, Skippy. In the control room is the lovely, the adorable, the Republican, but we'll forgive her for the moment, Randy. And April. Yeah, I know I should have done this already. Okay, that's labeled. Good. This is the second to the last in the series about utilitarianism. There is going to be one more after this, which I was not originally anticipating happening. Then we had class last night, and we kept going from the Rachel's book. And I'd forgotten all about my old buddy James Rachel's here in his book, The Elements of Moral Philosophy. And so I'm going to be addressing some of the things in there that he writes about utilitarianism. And that will be the next and the last in this series. Right. We are now up to the eating animals debate. For those of you who have been following the series, I mentioned earlier that we had a couple of young ladies, one of my friend Sarah, and the other one somebody I don't know, come into class who are both animal rights. They are both. I'm telling you, I've had a bad day. I'm going to be stumbling all over the place as I'm trying to talk. They are both animal sciences majors. They came to class in order to try to clear up some of the misconceptions which are held. Oh, great! I'm almost out of water too. To clear up some of the misconceptions held by the people in the class and Spear himself. Of course, trying to get something into Spear's head, is like trying to get water to go through a brick. Well, the brick part is accurate. We're talking about his head. He's got a head like a brick. Actually, it's like a chrome brick, but because he's balding. Nah, it's okay. I pick on Spear. He's alright, though. He's alright. I mean, for a white boy and everything. Okay. Now, I took these notes just basically in the order the debate was occurring. Some of these may not necessarily make sense to me when I read them, because that's just how it is when you're trying to take notes and listen to a debate and listen to everybody argue with each other. Although it was fairly well controlled, I have to admit, except of course for... Let me turn on some opera music. Maybe that'll help me focus. It was fairly well controlled, except of course that Spear had to keep jumping in all the time and never letting anybody finish anything. I take that back, Randy. Don't put on opera music. Put on the, put on the chant thingy. You know what I'm talking about? Yeah. That'll be better, I think. Is it playing? Well, I don't hear anything in here. Are you sure it's playing? I think you're on crack. Hold on. Oh, there it goes. Alright, turn it down. It's not coming in over the recording, is it? Yes, I'll be quiet. Okay, good, thank you. Alright, sound check, sorry. Sometimes I need a little background music in order to function around here. Okay, animal rights, animal eating. Yes, we debated it is good for animals to eat. We decided on that. The eating animals debate. What gives moral status to humans? Whatever it is, do animals have it? Why or why not? Now, this is a good question. Why do we not... Oh, and I should add this. Why do we not eat humans? Why do we not eat humans? That's supposed to be a question mark. And actually, this will get addressed later, but I'll throw it in right here anyway because I thought about it. What gives moral status to humans? I think the thing that gives moral status to humans is the same thing that gives humans rights, and that is our ability to understand moral I don't know if I want to say standards. I think maybe I want to say rights. Status, moral status. Thank you. See, I'm telling you, you should just come in here and do this today, because I am not. I don't know, I don't think I'm up for this, but it's got to be done, because I've got to get this done. What's really bad is it's written right in front of me in my notes, and I still can't think of the word. Alright. What gives moral status to humans? I think the thing which gives moral status to human beings is our ability to recognize, understand, and confer moral status upon other people, upon other beings. It is the inability of animals to do this that means that they have a lower moral status than humans do. Now, I'm not going to argue that animals have no moral status. I think I've covered that already in an earlier thing where I pointed out that while I believe we are perfectly entitled to eat the little critters, we should still treat them humanely while they are alive, and I do believe we in fact have a moral obligation to treat them humanely, to minimize their suffering as much as we can, and to provide for them up until the point that we're going to kill them and eat them, and at that point we should kill them as humanely and painlessly as possible. And then we have a barbecue. And I see nothing morally objectionable to this. Oh, and one of the things I didn't put on the notes, well, you know what, I will do it here. It'll fit in here. Do animals have it? Why or why not? Okay, they don't. Why do we not eat humans? Is there a moral, ethical reason to not eat humans? Well, actually, there really isn't, considering that. As long as we... Depends, too. If we're talking about, the plane wreck thing, and you're out there in the middle, and you're starving, and you eat the other passengers that were dead, I have no problem with that. I think it'd be kind of yucky. But, aside from a moral reason why we don't eat humans, there's also a practical reason, which is that cannibalism is just basically a bad idea, because you can spread a lot of diseases via cannibalism, being via eating your own species. That's how mad cow disease gets around, is they take the dead parts of cows and they feed them to other cows, and that's why that sort of thing shouldn't be happening. So cannibalism is a biologically bad idea. Is there a moral, ethical rationale for not engaging in cannibalism? It's a good question, which I hadn't actually thought of until right this minute, which means I'm going to have to make something up. So let me think a moment. Is there an ethical reason not to eat your own species? Well, I think we do have an ethical obligation to not eat anything else that is intelligent enough to also have ethical obligations, such as each other. Now, of course, this brings up two things, one of which I'm going to save until later, because it is in the notes, and it's near the end, and I'm going to save it. The other thing this brings up is, what about space aliens? Alright. So Spear asked the question, what about if aliens from another planet came to Earth and imprisoned us and raised us and butchered us and ate us. He says, would that be okay? And to their credit, the girls down there who are, I will refer to them as the girls. No offense is meant. I don't think Sarah's a feminazi type, and she would get pissed off at being called a girl. And I forget the other girl's name. I can't remember what her name was. I'll have to ask Sarah. Anyhow, I'm going to refer to them as the girls. What was the aliens? Thank you, Randy. Yeah, keep me on track. Oh, by the way, the email address, if you wish to contact us here at Stating the Obvious, is sto@204eastsouth.com. And today's date is the 6th of April. It is almost 4 p.m. I'm supposed to be doing that in the beginning of each edition, but I forget these things, and Randy doesn't keep me in line the way she's supposed to. I know, you need to smack me around more often. Especially, when you're wearing that little leather outfit of yours. Yeah, she's saying, I wish. What was I talking about? Space aliens! If space aliens came to Earth and they imprisoned us and they raised us and they slaughtered us to eat us, would this be okay? The girls, to their credit, said, well, if they could get away with it, then yeah, I guess it would. Because, I'm going to make the same answer. I'm going to say that ethically, morally, for the space aliens to do this, it might be wrong. But see, the problem is, there's this thing that philosophers always like to ignore called reality. And the reality is that if the little space aliens can come here, I've got to stop trying to do things while I'm talking. I just dropped that. If the space aliens can come here and can imprison us and eat us, then I guess they can get away with it, can't they? There's not going to be a whole lot we can do about it. It may sound harsh, but it's realistic, and that is why we are, around this place, the Cynical Libertarian Society, because we deal with reality. Morals are universal, rights are local. Spirits seem to have a difficult time telling the difference between a moral, and I guess there's different ways you could phrase these things, but he seemed to have a difficult time telling the difference between morals and rights. He kept saying, well, what about when the Nazis put the Jews in the concentration camp? Didn't they violate their rights? And the point, the argument I would make here is that you need to understand there's a difference, and it's a terminology thing, but from my terminology, I'm going to say that morals are the universal thing. You can have a moral right to life. A Jew in Germany has a moral right to life. Rights, well, I'm aware there is such a thing as a concept of moral rights. Rights in my thinking and our thinking tend to be things that come from the government, which is a whole other mess of potatoes that we don't want to get into, because rights don't actually come from the government. As I've said before, governments can only take away rights. But when the Nazis put the Jews in the concentration camps, they may have taken away the right to life that these people had legally, but just because they're doing that doesn't mean that these people actually lost the true moral right they had to exist. I think that came up, his whole right to life thing came up numerous times, of course. And yeah, you have to keep in mind, just because somebody does something such as putting a Jew in a concentration camp, that doesn't mean that the moral rights they have been taken away. It only means the legal rights they have has been taken away. It's interesting how Speer expected the girls to speak for others, such as Temple Grandin, but he didn't want anyone to speak for him. All through the debate, this was an ongoing thing. Speer would ask the girls, well, what does so-and-so say about this? Well, what does so-and-so say about that? And they'd be like, well, I don't know. Why don't you ask that person? That person's not here. But, Speer kept expecting them to be able to speak for other people. But Speer never wanted anybody to speak for him. Which, I don't blame him. I don't want other people to speak for me either. But I just found it fascinating that one of his debate tactics was to expect other people to speak for other people. Another thing Spear likes getting off on is this statistic he has, and I don't know where it comes from or how true it is or anything else, but we can pretend it's true, it's alright, about how the meatpacking industry has more injuries in it than any other industry. That may or may not be true. And how this was supposed to be related to killing animals and eating them, I have no clue. I think his point was supposed to be that these injuries happen when you're killing the animal and the animal like thrashes about or something and you get injured, or something like that. I have no clue what the fuck his point was supposed to be on this and how this is relevant to whether you can eat an animal or not. But the girls made a really good point about this that puts it into a little bit of perspective more. They said, yeah, but that's because in meatpacking plants, you have a lot of very sharp knives, you have a lot of large equipment that crushes things, you have a lot of large equipment that's moving around. So obviously, and you also have a lot of employees, so obviously you're going to have a lot of injuries. This is one of those times where when you put things in perspective, it makes so much sense. And still, what this has to do with not eating meat, the morality of eating meat is beyond me, but it's okay. Another vegetarians killed. This was great. This was a comment that came from one of the students. I've never thought of this before. I thought this was really, really good. He said, even if you're a vegetarian, animals still die for your diet, because when they run the combine through the field, and this is true, when they run the combine through the field, not only does it kill all sorts of insects, but also animals get caught up in this. Birds, like quails and stuff, like things that nest in the fields, little bunny rabbits, mice, rats, all sorts of animals get caught up in combines and pulled into the thing and get killed. And this is absolutely true. They do. So if you're a vegetarian, that vegetarian meal that you're eating, animals died for that. And we're going to come back to the combine a little later. Where am I? I don't remember exactly what context I made this note in. All I have written on my paper is, Spear knows what others think. He is fucking amazing. So, I can imagine that he was probably speaking for somebody else. Of course, I do the same thing, but it's okay when I do it. It's only wrong when other people do it. Let's see. Spear asked the question of the girls. We talked about confinement farming. Did I spell that right? I did. We talked about confinement farming, which is, to explain briefly in case you don't know, many animals, especially we'll stick with pigs. Pigs tend to be, I don't know if I should say tend to be. There are factory pig farms in which the pigs are raised in confinement. Field calves, there's the classic example. Field calves are raised in confinement. That's where you put the critter in a little box that's just big enough for the critter to stand there. It can't turn around, it can't move or anything like that. The girls agreed that this was inhumane and wrong. I think it's inhumane and wrong. Like I've said before, I want to eat an animal that's been walking around in a pasture, getting sunlight and wind and rain and all that other stuff. I don't believe in confining animals unless absolutely necessary. And in farming and livestocking, I don't see it as being necessary. In research, sometimes there are some conditions, very, very few, where you need to actually confine an animal. I can't think of any conditions where an animal has to be confined for its whole life. Sometimes it has to be confined periodically. But for farming livestock, I don't see any legitimate need for confinement farming. I can't talk. So, sorry folks, I'm drinking water. So when you hear the pauses, that's me taking a drink. Spear raised the question, should CSU be teaching confinement farming? Because CSU Animal Sciences does teach this. And the girls made a valid point. Their point was, and by the way, I'm going to be speaking for these two women throughout this thing, and hopefully I'm not going to fuck it up and misrepresent something that they said. So if anybody out there hears this and knows this, and I have misrepresented something that they said, which of course you'd only know this if you were Sarah or this other young lady. So if I have misrepresented something you said, then let me know and I will issue a correction. The girl said that, well, this is the type of practice which is currently predominant in the industry. And so CSU needs to teach its students what is going on currently in the industry, because they need to know when they go out there. And this makes sense. The Spear didn't like that, of course, but I mean, it's a valid, and there's a lot of things Spear doesn't seem to grasp, and that would be one of them. You got to teach people about what's actually going on right now. You can't teach them about the way you want it to be or the way it should be. Or let me rephrase that. You can't teach them the way you want it to be, and you can't teach them the way it should be. But you have to teach them the way it is in addition to those things. Humane killing. This is, of course, a really big one. We're talking about, are these animals killed humanely, and what exactly constitutes humanely? Now, according to the girls, humane killing, we're going to speak specifically to cattle here, that humane killing is defined as the animal does not know what's coming, it doesn't know it's about to die, animal is instantly unconscious, and there is no stress leading up to the death of the animal, no stress in the animal leading up to its death. We talked about failures. A failure in, that is to say, a failure of the animal to be humanely killed. And Spear likes to get all excited about that the failure rate is less than 1%. And the girls pointed out, and this is a great statistical manipulation type thing. The girls pointed out that a failure in the industry is considered any sign of distress in the animal. That means if the cow's in the little killing chamber there and the thing's going, and the cow moos, that's considered a failure. If it swishes its tail, that's considered a failure. Now, it doesn't mean it swished its tail because it knew it was going to die. It just means it swished its tail. So the failure statistics that are out there are obviously going to be inflated because the industry considers anything slightly abnormal to be a failure, even though it may not necessarily be a failure. And I can see, the industry's reason for doing that from their perspective. I mean, because first of all, how do you know? How do you know that the cow really feels distress or not? You got to count things like that. So you're going to naturally get these inflated figures, but of course, PETA wackos are going to pounce on this. Moving. Spear doesn't grasp, apparently, that social change sometimes comes slowly. He wants everything now. Whenever he would mention something about how confinement farming was bad or something like that, and the girls would say, well, we're moving away from that. And the Spear would get all irate, wow, moving. It's like, you need to understand, you can't have everything. He's like a child. Philosophy majors are like children. They think they know everything, and they want everything now. See, unlike me, because I think I know everything, and I want everything now, but it's different for me because, quick, Randy, why is it different for me? Oh yeah, because I have a big dick. That's, okay, whew. Alright, man, I saved myself on that one. Good job, thanks, Randy. Okay, so anyway, change the topic. Humans, dogs, pigs are all omnivores. This came up, too. There are, of course, some people in the class who are under the impression that human beings, I can't spell words here, that human beings can survive on vegetarian diets. Now, this, of course, comes from watching too much television. Human beings are omnivores. I'm sorry if this hurts your feelings, but we are motherfucking omnivores. We are designed to eat meat and plants. And there are people out there, alright, you can live a perfectly normal life as a vegetarian. And yeah, whatever. Apparently, this is not something I'm up on, but this is something that came up and was touched on. Apparently, if you are a strict vegetarian, is that a a vegan. See, I consider all of these people to be fucking freaks. I can't distinguish between vegans and vegans and vogans and vorgons and vegetarians and vegfunkers and loopy doopies and what the fuck ever else there may be. But apparently, if you consume no kind of animal byproducts whatsoever, you need to take supplements or some shit. I'm gonna be honest with you, this is, I don't know and I don't really give a fuck. The simple fact of the matter is, human beings are designed to eat meat and plants. It's just that fucking simple. Now, Speer, of course, got in on this. He's pointed out that Speer pointed out that if it's okay for us to eat meat because we are equipped to eat meat, then that means that women should be pregnant every 10 months because women are equipped to be pregnant every 10 months. Now, how he gets that, I'm not sure, but the guy has some things he likes to talk about. And one of the things he likes to talk about is women getting pregnant. So we'll hit a couple of more Spearisms in a little bit too. But it's okay. I mean, that doesn't have anything to do with anything, but it was still fun. It was worth a laugh. Oh, and then he get on his other favorite Spearism. I think I mentioned this a couple of sessions back. His thing about this child that dies every 6 seconds. And my question is, if this child dies every 6 seconds, shouldn't the little fucker be dead by now? But this came up in the context this brought about the idea of feeding the world. Let me type this in. Not a production problem. It's a distribution problem. And I know I talked about this in an earlier edition, but I'm going to touch on it briefly again. Because Speer was amazed. Speer was amazed by this. For those of you out there who actually think that there are people starving in the world because we don't have enough food, you're what's known as a fucking idiot. There's plenty of food in the world. Look at how much food you personally throw in the trash every day. Look at how much food we store in this country that goes to waste. Look how many farmers are paid to not grow food. Look how much food goes in the garbage out behind McDonald's, behind any restaurant, any place else. There's ass loads of food in this world. The reason people are starving in other countries is because we can't get the food to them. It is a distribution problem, not a production problem. Now, of course, why can't we get the food there? We can't get the food there because these people who are starving live in third world countries that have despotic governments which are involved in wars, and they have no infrastructure. So even if you send the food over there, the food disappears in these black holes. The food is taken by guerrilla I was going to say guerrilla warriors. That sounds really stupid. The food is taken by soldiers, by military personnel, by rebels, by the government, whatever, and essentially it's used as a weapon to manipulate the people into supporting the rebels or not supporting the rebels, or supporting the government or not supporting the government, whatever it may be. The point is, there's plenty of food to feed people. And this came up, and I'll talk about this a little bit more later on when we get to the end of this. Another great Speer quote, somebody brought up acid rain. They asked Speer, does he drive a car? He says, yeah. And they said, well, then you're responsible for acid rain. And Speer replied but Speer's response was, I'm not as responsible for the acid rain. So that's great. So if you drive a car, you're contributing to acid rain and global warming and all these other wacko left-wing tree hugger shit. But you're not as responsible. First of all, you're not as responsible as who? But second of all, so does that mean that if I have one slave and not 100, that means I'm not as responsible for slavery, so it would be okay? What if I only rape one woman instead of 10 women? Does that mean I'm not as responsible for rape, and so therefore it's okay? Speer also illustrated that he does not understand slightly the concepts of economics or of a market-driven economy. The girls made some good points that many of the... Hold on. Water, thank you, sorry about that. girls made a good point that many of the meatpacking plants and many parts of the meat-producing farming industry are moving towards more humane treatment of their animals and better quality, less use of steroids, hormones, antibiotics. Thank you, Randy. Moving towards all of these things because this is what the customers want. And the customers are sending messages via their buying habits that is what they want. They don't want animals that are mistreated. They don't want animals with antibiotics and steroids and all this other crap. And Spear seemed to just be lost by this whole concept, aghast at it. This was not the way it should be done. And of course that's not surprising because he's a utilitarian. And as a utilitarian, he does of course have to think that everything has to be not market-driven, everything has to be government-driven. The government has to say, well, this is how you're going to raise your cows, and you're going to do it, because you're too dumb to figure it out on your own. See, I would submit that the market-driven aspect of this is great. If this is going to bring these people into alignment with moral values, this is going to get these farmers to treat their animals better, a lot better than any kind of government mandates or anything, because money talks, bullshit walks. Market-driven economy is going to provide a solution here, given time. But of course Spear doesn't want it to take time. He wants it to happen right now. At some point in the thing, Sarah made a comment that she said, quote, "We want our species to thrive," unquote. I don't remember exactly what context this was made in, but the only reason I wrote this down is because I just want to point out that you have to remember not everybody wants our species to thrive. There are some people out there, many of them are tree-hugging hippie types, who in fact want the human species destroyed. And hell, sometimes I want you little motherfuckers destroyed, because you're stupid. Look, in the last election you guys fucking voted for George Bush. You elected a fucking retarded nincompoop when you could have instead elected a different retarded nincompoop. It never occurred to you motherfuckers out there to vote for anybody other than one of the two retarded nincompoops. And why you people should be allowed to live and waste oxygen and consume resources that could be used for somebody who's smart like me, I don't know. So I don't think you people need to be around either. I'm not sure I want our species to thrive. So, my next note. Spear is obsessed with retarded children and women getting women pregnant. We've already covered the getting women. He must have made some comment about that again. We'll get to retarded children in a minute. How do we get... Oh, this was funny. How did we get here? Somehow or another we started talking about humans prefer the company of other humans as opposed to the company of animals. Spear, of course, never missing an opportunity, said, well then, does that mean that white people prefer the company of white people? And does that mean that men prefer the company of men and women prefer the company of women? Well, first of all, if you look around, if you go into, say, the dining hall at CSU Laurie Student Center, you'll tend to see clumps of people based on gender, skin color, religion. If you go over and ask them all sorts of things, yeah, people naturally clump together according to their similarities, and sometimes those similarities are gender, sometimes those similarities are skin color, whatnot. But my question is this: if white people do like hanging out with white people, and if this is wrong, what are we going to do about it? Are people like Spear going to have forced association? Are you going to, when you go to the lunchroom, have to sit next to a black person if you're white? And what if there aren't enough black people to go around? What are we going to do? Are we going to breed more black people? Are we going to reduce the reproductive rate of white people? It was silly. It was just silly. Is one animal life worth one human life? Now these are some questions that I wrote down, which I want an answer to from a PETA wacko. And I'm thinking I might email these. I might send an email to Spear sometime and try to get some answers from him. Though I have a feeling, it's just a feeling, it's just a suspicion, but I have a feeling I won't be able to get an answer out of that man. But what I would like a PETA wacko to answer for me is, number one, is one animal life worth one human life? I would like a PETA wacko to tell me what attributes give humans moral status, and if they think animals have moral status also, then what attribute gives humans and animals moral status. That's fine, I got no problem with that. And I would like them to answer for me, if PETA cares so much, why don't they set up an organization to monitor organic meat and humane treatment of animals? Now, of course, I think their answer to that would be, well, we're opposed to eating animals, period. I would say, so does that mean you're just going to abandon the animals that are out there being raised to be eaten right now and not pay any attention to them? That doesn't sound like you care about animals very much to me. It sounds to me like you care about forcing people to not eat meat, which is a lot different from caring about animals. Spear asked a question. We got, of course, into bioengineering, genetic engineering of animals. Spear, and we talked about the genetic engineering of animals, the selective breeding, I should say. The selective breeding of animals. The girl said that pigs are selectively bred to exist in confinement farming scenarios. They're selectively bred to not go nuts and wacko and insane when they're put into confinement situations like that. So that we got onto selective breeding. Spear asked the question, is it okay to engineer cigarette butt picker-uppers? I think he smokes, because there's been a couple of jokes about this, which is kind of funny. He's a PETA person who smokes, if he does smoke. His question is, can we engineer people to be happy just walking around campus picking up cigarette butts? Because this would be equivalent to engineering a pig to be happy trapped in a little cell where it can't even move. And I can see his point. I mean, I can see his point on this. But my response would be, don't we already engineer cubicle dwellers in public schools and colleges? I mean, we may not be manipulating people genetically by determining who breeds with who to get what results, but we are certainly engineering via the mind human beings who are subpar, who are willing to do menial jobs for low pay and be happy, sitting in a cubicle 9 hours a day pushing buttons on a little box in order to make a rich person richer. I mean, I've always said that the entire point of public education is to create a group of citizens who will be just smart enough to do their jobs and keep the economy going, but not smart enough to ever question anything the government does. And so my response to his question would be that we are already engineering cigarette butt picker-uppers. What about mentally infirmed burgers, otherwise known as retard burgers? And of course debating why it's okay to eat an animal, a large part of the rationale for this was that animals don't know they're going to die. They don't know what's coming. And so this is one of the reasons it's okay to eat them. Spear made the point, well, what about retarded kids? Retarded kids don't know they're going to die. So what if we took retarded people and we breed them and they make retarded children, and then we took these retarded children and we slaughter them and we eat them and we make retard burgers? What? No, I'm not making this up. Randy's asking me if I'm making this up. No, I'm serious. We're going to make retard burgers. And, I mean, okay, no, he makes a valid point. If that's your argument, if your argument is the animal doesn't know what's coming, the animal doesn't know it's going to die, then you can make this argument, retards don't know they're going to die either. I mean, it's funny, but it's a legitimate parallel, in my opinion. But the difference, though, this just takes us back to the cannibalism thing. We don't eat retard burgers because eating your own species is unhealthy. Not to mention the fact that it is just kind of gross. But No, but see, that's the thing. That's just a personal. I mean, there's a lot of animals I don't eat just because I think they're gross and I don't like the taste. I've had rabbit. I was not impressed. I've had venison. I was not impressed. I mean, I'd eat any of those if I was starving and my option was eat a rabbit or die, or eat venison or die, or even eat a retarded kid and die. I would do it. I eat beef because I like beef. I'm not real thrilled with turkey. I eat chicken rarely because I like chicken. I like chicken, but I don't like the way chicken is raised, and I don't trust people who cook chicken except myself. So I rarely eat chicken. But mostly I eat beef, and I eat bacon. I don't eat pork chops. Nope, can't stand it. And I eat sausage. I love sausage, and sausage is one of the grossest things. I don't even want to think about what's in sausage. But, I mean, I don't eat retard burgers because, number one, it's an aesthetic choice, just like I don't eat duck or rabbit or venison. It's an aesthetic choice. And I don't eat retard burger because it is biologically unsound to engage in cannibalism. Now we got to a really interesting little commentary. I needed water. Somehow or another, I don't know how I can't remember how we got here. But Speer made this statement that he had been talking to somebody, and this somebody told him that the most economical way to do things would be slavery. So if we were going to do things the economical way, we should go back to slavery. Now, I don't know who told him this, but this person is obviously a dumbass. I was on the John Deere website today. I was trying to find out how much a combine cost in order to pick cotton. And of course, like most multi-billion-dollar corporations, their website doesn't actually have any prices on it. I guess, if you can't put the price of the things you sell on your website, then something's wrong. So anyway, I can't tell you how much a combine cost, but I have a feeling that a combine cost a lot less money than owning and providing for, I don't know how many slaves it would take to do the work of one combine. Let's make 100. Excuse-moi. Ooh, that was a big old yawn. I don't know how many slaves it takes to do the work of one high-speed, low-drag, super-duper combine. But you consider these slaves have to have food, they have to have plumbing facilities, they have to have a place to live, they have to have medical care. Even if it's shitty medical care, they got to have some kind of medical care. You have to provide, when they get too old to work, you got to provide for them still. You got to do something else with them, unless you're just going to take them out and shoot them. When they're children, if you're breeding them, when they're children, but when they're too young to work, you still got to feed them and take care of them and everything. I mean, the idea that slavery is more economical than technology is absolutely stupid. I mean, so according to Speer's thinking here, instead of using semi-trucks to haul things from one side of the country to the other, we could use slaves. We could put everything in a big wagon the size of a semi-truck trailer, and the slaves could just pull it across the country. What the fuck is this shit? Slavery is not the most economical way to do things. Technology is. We discussed, and so I think when the students brought this one up, this is a really good thing also. We were discussing the way animals are bred for certain traits. They pointed out that the same thing happens with pets. All these weird little dogs that are bred to be strange looking, and apparently, see, I'm not up on this shit because I don't even like dogs, but apparently there are some dogs that are bred to be like show dogs, and these dogs are not able to even copulate on their own. For those of you from Arkansas, copulate means fuck. And so if you want the dogs to reproduce, you have to take the male dog and pick him up and hold him over the female dog and stick his penis in there and probably go back and forth for him, because the dogs can't even fuck on their own because they're so messed up from all kinds of weird inbreeding and stuff. I mean, that's just some sick shit. Dogs are gross. That's just wrong. Points brought up in the debate. So at the end, after we took our break, and this debate went on for probably close to 2 hours. Total, not including the break. Something in that range. What time is it? Okay, thanks. Is it real? Oh, crap. Alright, thanks, Randy. Points that were brought up after the break. We sat down and we made a list of all the points that were brought up during the debate. I want to go over these briefly and make some commentaries on them. Moral distinction between humans and non-human animals. Is there a moral distinction between human animals and non-human animals? And I've covered my opinion on that already. To briefly recap, their moral distinction is that humans, it's the same distinction with rights, humans are capable of recognizing morals and respecting moral laws, and that is why we have a moral distinction above and beyond animals. Right to live versus quality of life. That should be right to life. Right to life versus quality of life. Do animals have a right to life? That is to say, do they have a right to not be eaten by human beings at all? Or do they have a right to a quality life before they are eaten? Now, I'm not even sure I like to use the word right, but I will say this. Well, maybe I do need to use the word right. I believe animals do have a right to a quality life before they are eaten, but they also have the right to end up on my barbecue grill. Anyway, this is a typical Spear thing here. Exploitation of resources for profit versus stewardship. As if you can't have stewardship for profit. See, if you're making profit, you're exploiting. But if you're a PETA person, you have stewardship, and there is no profit. And if you don't have any profit, I'm not sure how the fuck you can take care of the land, because if you want to do things to the land, you need money, but whatever. So that came up. Because one of the things we discussed also was, see, Spear and all these other PETA wackos, this goes back to the feeding the world thing. These people think the reason there's not enough food to feed everybody in the world is because large parts of America are used to grow grains and other types of crops, which are then used to feed animals. And that if this land was instead used to grow crops that could be used to feed people, there would be no hunger in the world. This is why these people are dumb. And so, see, to them, this is exploitation of resources. And as was pointed out by the girls, a lot of this land that is used for growing these crops, that is used for feeding animals, is land where you can't grow crops that would be good for feeding people, simply because of the climate there, the soil, the whatevers. And also, a lot of this stuff that does grow there has been genetically engineered or selectively bred to grow there. So the point is, when you see these fields full of grains that are being grown to feed animals, nobody is starving because of that. I've already pointed out, there's plenty of food out there. There's ass-fucking loads of food out there. It's just because of stupid people in governments in other countries that we can't get the food to the people who are starving. It's also because people like Spear, who care about this child that dies every 6 seconds, isn't doing very much to get off his ass and feed this fucking child. He just likes to whine about the child and try to use the child to make other people feel guilty for not doing the things that he doesn't have the balls to do himself. Humane killing. We did, of course, naturally discuss, should the animals be killed humanely versus inhumanely. And I don't think anybody in there was in favor of the animals being tortured, especially not the girls, certainly not me, certainly not Spear. None of us are in favor of the animals suffering, so far as I'm aware. If you are in favor of the animal suffering, then you have a problem. Are we in the food chain, and does it matter? This kind of came up. Are human beings part of the food chain, or have we, because of our technology, separated ourselves, removed ourselves from the food chain? See, I don't think we have. Some people would say, well, we've removed ourselves from the food chain because we are now the super predator on Earth. But remember, we are only the super predator on Earth when we have our technology. If I'm out in the woods and I run into a mountain lion, and I have a shotgun and a high-powered rifle, well then I'm the super predator. If I'm out in the woods and I've been running and I run into a mountain lion and I've got my shorts and a t-shirt and a pair of jogging shoes, I am not the super predator in that scenario. I am motherfucking dinner. Human beings are definitely part of, and this also goes back to Spear's earlier question about the aliens coming here and eating us. The food chain doesn't have to stop with this planet. If the aliens come along and they're bigger and better and smarter than we are, then hey, it looks like we're right back in the food chain, aren't we? What? Okay, sorry folks. We're doing technical thing there. Alternative food sources. Alternative food sources. What the hell were we talking about? Alternative food sources. Yeah, I know. You weren't there. You can't help me. Randy, I have no clue what that was referring to. Alternative food sources. I don't know. Well, we talked about alternative food sources, whatever that means. Confinement agriculture. Obviously, we talked about confinement agriculture. Pigs, veal, chickens are treated pretty bad in this respect too. Confinement agriculture, I personally am opposed to that. The girls maintain that these animals in confinement agriculture are bred to survive and thrive in those conditions. That's one of those things that I'm going to say, yeah, okay, but I'm not sure if that necessarily makes it right. I am opposed to confinement agriculture. We talked about steroids and antibiotics being used. I am opposed to anything such as that being used unless it's absolutely necessary. We talked about natural rights versus institutional rights. This goes back to the putting the Jews in the concentration camps thing. This goes back to when I said Speer can't tell the difference between morals and rights. What I would call a moral is a natural right. What I would call a right is an institutional right. So there's your difference. Natural rights are, objective, moral things that come from outside of our human existence that are universal. Institutional rights are, of course, things like in the United States we have freedom of speech, theoretically. That's an institutional right. Institutional rights can instantly vanish, such as many of our institutional rights have here. But that does not affect the fact you still have your natural right, because natural rights are separate from institutional rights. Taking away an institutional right cannot take away a natural right. Do humans require animals as food? We talked about this, and I, of course, believe they do, as did the girls. Consumer responsibilities. We talked about what are your responsibilities as a consumer. If you want animals to be treated humanely, don't you have a responsibility to make your opinions known to the manufacturers, to seek out and buy, for example, free-range chickens? Excuse me, hang on a second. Okay. Consumer responsibilities, I think that's a big one, especially with the poultry industry. Because as I've said, chickens are treated pretty harshly, and free-range chickens are now popping up on the market. And I know many people are buying these, and yes, they cost more, but this is a great example of sending a message to the consumers of what you want. As a consumer, sending a message to the manufacturers about what you want. And as a consumer, you do have that responsibility, I believe, to seek out the products that support the moral and ethical beliefs that you believe in, and reward those manufacturers for adhering to those beliefs. Pets versus livestock. We could, in fact, actually add in versus research animals. Because there's one set of standards for pets, there's one set of standards for livestock, which is very low, and there's one set of standards for research animals. And livestock are definitely at the bottom. Livestock can legally, of course, be pretty much abused as people want. And I mean that strictly from a legal sense. Genetic engineering versus breeding. Now this is something I've talked about before, not here, but I've talked about this in other places. Is there a difference between, because a lot of people get terrified of genetic engineering, yet we've been doing genetic engineering for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and possibly thousands and thousands of years. I mean, that's where dogs and cats came from, except we didn't call it genetic engineering because we weren't manipulating DNA. We called it breeding because we were selectively breeding the animals. There's really, genetic engineering is the same thing as breeding, it just happens a lot faster. There's no inherent difference between the two. We engage, it's the same thing with humans. People are terrified of genetic engineering in humans. Yet we do the same thing. I mean, when I go out and I want to have sex with somebody, I make a selection as to who I want to have sex with. I don't just do it with any random person. I mean, that right there, that's selective breeding. And actually, I should need to change notes. I need to add selective. Selective breeding. Because there is a difference between genetic... Well, I was going to say there's a difference between genetic engineering and breeding. Genetic engineering is boring. Breeding is fun. At least when I'm breeding, it is. But selective breeding and genetic engineering are the same damn thing. It's just that selective breeding takes a lot longer. Oh, and then, let's see, Spear actually tested us over this, which was okay. Let me take a look at this test and see if this brings up anything that I want to talk about. Now, this person here, I don't know who this person is. I'm going to have to look her up. Somebody called Temple Grandin, TempleGrandin, Temple Grandin. Apparently she's very active. She's part of the Animal Sciences, and she's very active in working for humane treatment of animals, livestock, and all this other stuff. I don't know any specifics about her, other than Sarah is an admirer of hers and thinks that she's doing great work and is doing wonderful things for the animals. So I'm going to do some research on that. I'm throwing that out. I need to put that in the notes so that other people can check it out too. Let's see. Let's see, animals. Yeah, one of the arguments that we're not in the food chain is that because we get our food at the supermarket, we don't have to go out looking for it. And that's one of those things. I don't know if going to the supermarket... I don't think going to the supermarket removes you from the food chain. We've already talked about that. We are equipped to eat meat, yes. Let's see, today's swine are bred to adapt to confinement conditions. They did say that. Yes, they said that. The other young lady, not Sarah, and this is one thing I will fault them on. The other young lady said that her reasons for not assigning moral status to non-human animals was based on a religious perspective. When Spear questioned her on that, she said that she was not willing to, that was not something she was going to debate because that was not part of this debate. And actually, in that case, I got to tell you that if you go into a debate like this and you want to say something like, well, I think it's okay to eat animals, they say, well, why don't animals have the same moral status as humans? And you say, well, because of my religious beliefs. And they say, well, then how do your religious beliefs get to that? Then you say, well, my religious beliefs are private. That's not part of the debate. Actually, you're wrong, because your religious beliefs are part of the debate. So if you go into a debate like this some point in your life, you can't sit there and say, well, I believe this, but I can't discuss why I believe it because it's private. Just a little critique. You got to be prepared to back things up. You can't say, well, my beliefs in that area are private. Let's see, we talked about that. Okay. So, yeah. That's it for this one. We are out of here. There will be one more in the Utilitarian series. When it's going to get recorded, I'm not sure. In theory, I'm going to get these posted tonight. And the final part will be coming in the next couple of days at least. Right then, adios, and then after this I can get back to making fun of politics and current events and the general stupidity of people in the world around me, because I have a stack of things here to be pulling out and talking about, and we're going to have some fun. It will not be philosophy or morality related. It will be idiots of the world related. Yeah, plus it's a nice day outside. I need to go outside and spend a little time out there before class. Oh yeah.
Why should you bother with the other side? Even though yours is right.
Yeah, why should I pay attention to the other side? I know my side is right.